Dear friends and colleagues, I will speak in English, though it may sound a little bit awkward, but we have here a mixed and international audience. This is why we will be proceeding in English today. You know, when people have their birthdays and anniversaries, normally what they want to do, they want just to get rid of all, you know, the has and buzz and just to escape somewhere. Today we have here completely different character. A person who wanted for his 90th birthday to share with us his views, but also to learn from you. Because our guest today and our friend, Ambassador Alan Mahmoudovich Tимербаев, has always been great not only in sharing his views, but also is learning. This is why he's so young. And this is why I think that non-proliferation, school and non-proliferation traditions that Ambassador Tимербаев has been helping to build both in Russia and internationally, they have become so productive. Дорогой Ролан Михайлович, I feel uncomfortable to speak longer here because people know who you are. People are here not to learn about you because they read your books, because they have it as their background, but just to hear from you and to exchange views from you. And we chose here the topic of the essence and spirit of the Treaty of the Non-Proliferation on Nuclear Weapons and current challenges to non-proliferation regime. Ролан Михайлович, мы поздравляем вас с днем рождения, с юбилеем. We congratulate you with your birthday, and we will continue to do so after the seminar, this roundtable, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Vladimir. My English is not as good as his, but I will try to do my best to make you understand what is the gist of my remarks about non-proliferation. But before I start speaking about the NPT, I shall be using this abbreviation, which is, I hope, known to you. NPT, Non-Proliferation Treaty. Before I begin to speak about NPT, I would like to discuss a bit terminology. We say the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. I'd like to make a note that weapons is not the right word to use in this context, because nuclear explosive is not a weapon. Weapon is something, some device, some explosive, which helps you to win a war, if you have enough of weapons, or to lose a war, if you don't have enough weapons. But nuclear weapons, with nuclear weapons, you cannot win a war. Nuclear weapons is an explosive, a device, an instrument that can lead to self-destruction, to mutual destruction, and to general annihilation. This is understood by many people, not by all. When President Trump recently said that he wants to do something about North Korea, and he used very strong language, I thought that he may not understand that you cannot win a war with nuclear weapons. It can lead only to general annihilation. This is a terminology note that I would like to make in the first instance. Now, how come this weapon was invented? How come? Why? What is the reason? As you sure know, the first person who understood how the theory of relativity and who found a formula thanks to which you can create a nuclear weapon was Albert Einstein in 1905, about 40 years before the weapon was created. So the theory of relativity and the possibility of creating a nuclear explosive or atomic explosive, if you want to use that word, but this was known to physicists of such nature, of such level as Albert Einstein, 40 years before this weapon was actually invented and created. So, that means to me that atomic weapons or atomic explosive is something which is a part of universe, a part of life, a part of God's creation. Only at some point in time, scientists, physicists of the level of Albert Einstein did find out the formula which they proposed, and under which formula they later on scientists created a nuclear weapon. Now, this is, in my view, this understanding of what is nuclear explosive, what is nuclear war, is now more and more understood. And I'm very happy to note that recently the Nobel Prize Committee awarded a Nobel Peace Prize to a non-governmental organization which is called ICAN. ICAN is an abbreviation, of course, and ICAN means International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons. I'm very happy that the trend of more understanding the nature and the danger of nuclear weapons for mankind is become more and more known. And as you all know, I hope, this year a group of states, more than 100 of them, they drafted a treaty to abolish nuclear weapons. And the treaty was signed in September by a great number of states, and it's not yet has come into force, but there is a hope that this treaty will come into force. This is my preliminary remarks. Now let's talk about nuclear weapons, about non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. I will be using the word weapons because I was writing this word when the treaty was drafted some 50 years or more years ago, and I'm used to this word, but actually this is not the right word, as I said before. Now, what is my... If you have any questions, you can interrupt me and ask me, please.
We definitely will have a discussion.
Yes.
on that.
We can have a discussion even during my talk. I have to use, because otherwise I don't see. The whole idea of a treaty to stop non-proliferation came in the 60s, especially after the Cuban Missile Crisis. I'm using here the American terminology, Cuban Missile Crisis. In Russia, we say Caribbean crisis. It was this crisis took place in October 1962. It was the greatest crisis of the 20th century. No, after the two world wars, of course, it was the greatest crisis after these two world wars, and when this crisis came and was fortunately solved due to efforts by both United States and the Soviet Union. Then it was clear that a door was opening for a new effort to do something about nuclear weapons. And soon after this crisis, early in 1963, US President John Kennedy, for the first time, used the word, let's stop the spread of nuclear weapons. And soon after, a few weeks after that, the Soviet leader, Nikita Khrushchev, supported this idea. And after that, a series of negotiations started, which finally led to the conclusion of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. I will be using abbreviation NPT. Because that crisis showed that we cannot be quiet if this new weapon cannot be stopped. We must do something about it. By that time, 5 states had nuclear weapons. United States, Soviet Union, Britain, France, and China. And the 6th one, Israel, was about to have this weapon. So the time has come to do something about it. According to experts from United States side and the Soviet side, about 25 to 30 states might create nuclear weapons in the foreseeable future. So time has come to do something about it. But the beginning was not that fast. The first person who said, let's do it, was the foreign minister of Ireland, Frank Aiken. He was the first person who proposed a resolution in the United Nations General Assembly resolution which provided for negotiations leading to the conclusion of the NPT. But it took some years, a few years, before this was done. And the Cuban Missile Crisis was a very serious situation when negotiations started, as I said before. And negotiations started in 1966. First of all, between the Soviet Union and United States in New York during the session of the United Nations General Assembly in 1966. And the first idea was to decide on the main two articles, Articles 1 and 2. I don't think I need to read these articles. I hope you have heard about them. The first article, Article 1, says that no one is to transfer nuclear weapons or control of nuclear weapons to other states. And the Article 2 provided for non-nuclear weapon states not to accept nuclear weapons or control of nuclear weapons from nuclear weapon states. This is the main idea. But it took 3 months to prepare this article between the two, between the United States and the Soviet Union. And then it was decided to involve other states in the process of drafting the whole treaty, the whole NPT. And starting with February 1967, these negotiations started in the then existing 18-nation disarmament committee in Geneva. And then this committee started to, first of all, to draft an article on controls, because, of course, the treaty should be internationally controlled. There should be some international inspections. It took about 6 months to draft this article, and then other articles. Now, which articles are not that good in my view, though I was one of the authors. One of them. This is, first of all, Article 6. Article 6 provides for nuclear weapon states to negotiate in goodwill nuclear disarmament. Of course, this is a very smooth article, which doesn't have strong language. It doesn't put in any dates, any dates, and just to negotiate in goodwill. That's all. So this is a rather weak article. But this was the view of the nuclear weapon states, including the Soviet Union and including the United States, not to leave this article as weak as possible. The idea came from non-nuclear weapon states, from Egypt and from Mexico. They drafted this language. They drafted a much stronger language, especially Mexican. Draft was much stronger, but the Big Five, as they call it, the nuclear weapon states didn't like the strong language. So Article 6 is not as strong as it could be and as it should be. Another article, which is not good enough, is Article 4. Article 4 provides for peaceful uses of nuclear energy. This article provides that all non-nuclear weapon states which are prohibited from making nuclear weapons can use nuclear energy for peaceful purposes, like, for instance, for nuclear power stations, or for creating reactors that produce medical isotopes and so on. But this article is not strong enough either, because it doesn't specify what kind. Yes, the article says that states should facilitate other states. They can facilitate, they can help other states to use nuclear energy for peaceful purposes. But that's what it says. But it doesn't specify what particular help can be provided. And it doesn't mention the fact that by that time, in the nuclear weapons state, there were different, very serious methods of producing enriched uranium or producing plutonium, which can be used for nuclear, for weapons purposes. But there is nothing in Article 4 which prohibits from providing non-nuclear weapon states with equipment that can be used for producing enriched uranium or plutonium. And by the way, quite recently, Britain published its archives, in which it said that Britain proposed during negotiations in 1967, they proposed to the United States to do something about putting more specification in Article 4 about the enrichment process and so on. But the United States didn't like it. Didn't like it. So the present Article 4 doesn't contain anything, only general words, general description. By the way, if the Soviet Union could be involved in the process of specifying what kind of help can be given to non-nuclear weapon states, Soviet Union could be also in a difficulty, because by that time in the Soviet Union they created a very good method of enriching uranium, the gas centrifuge method, which we didn't want, of course, to open to the rest of the world. So this question, the Article 4 remains as dim as it is now. What about my
Yes.
I have plenty of time?
You have plenty of time.
Yeah, I have plenty of time. Good. Good. I will. Because I want to give time to my young colleagues. Now. Of course, Article 10, which provides for possibility of withdrawal from the treaty, is not strong enough. It gives to anybody a chance to withdraw from the treaty, which happened with North Korea, as you know. North Korea was not eager to join the treaty, and my foreign minister, Mr. Gromyko, sent me to Pyongyang around 1980, I think it was, and asked me to persuade the North Koreans to join NPT. And I was lucky at this point. I really don't know how to explain this, but North Koreans agreed to join, and they joined NPT in 1985. In 1985, they joined NPT. But about a dozen years later, or maybe 15 years later, I forget now, how many, my memory is not as good as yours. But if you want to know, everything is in the internet, you can find. And on what date, when North Korea withdrew from the treaty. So the language of Article 10 is not good enough. It's not good enough. But really, the whole treaty is a product of compromise. The important thing was to stop proliferation. And we had to agree. We had to agree to something which we didn't like very much. Whatever. So now, there are many problems which stand before us today, and we can discuss it if you will ask me questions. There is a problem of the Middle East, because there is one country in the Middle East that is a nuclear weapon state, which is Israel. And probably some of you know that it was the United States that said, okay, you can have it, but don't tell about it. Something like this. There was a discussion between President Nixon and Prime Minister Golda Meir, who was that Prime Minister. It was in 1969. By that time, the United States didn't yet ratify the NPT. And Nixon knew that the Congress of the United States may object to ratification because of Israel, because of support for Israel. In fact, the United States said, okay, go ahead, keep it, but don't tell it to anyone. So there is a problem. Because of the Middle East, because of Israel, we cannot solve for many years the problem of creating a weapon free of nuclear and other weapons of mass destruction in the Middle East. And there are many problems which you know very well, because always, practically all the time, there is some conflicts going on in Israel, and one of the reasons for that is the existence of nuclear weapons in Israel. So this is one problem. Another problem is North Korea. I already mentioned North Korea. How to deal with North Korea, nobody has yet proposed satisfactory solution to this issue. So there are quite a few problems. Though non-proliferation is not a bad treaty, but it didn't stop proliferation completely. So we'll have to deal with this. How to deal with this? There are many ways. I mentioned Israel, I mentioned North Korea. There is a problem with Iran, as you may have heard. The United States now is not happy with the solution of the Iranian nuclear issue, which took place in 2015, and now we don't know yet what can be the next process, the next developments in this respect. So there are quite a few problems left. But still, the important, on the part of the big powers, on the part of the big nuclear weapon states, the big issue is how they act themselves. During the last 25 or 30 years, the Soviet Union and the Russian Federation on the one part, and the United States on the other part, they have seriously reduced their nuclear arsenals by a factor of 5 or 6. It's we didn't completely fulfill Article 6, which provides for negotiations in goodwill on nuclear disarmament. But still, we did quite a few things, and let's continue. But unfortunately, for the last 7 years, nothing is being done. Usually, after 2 or 3 or 4 years, there were new negotiations, and during these negotiations, we did reduce nuclear weapons by a factor of 5 or 6. I mean, the Soviet Union and Russia and the United States. Now, but 7 years ago, we concluded the last treaty, which is called New Start in English, and we call it SNV 3 in Russian, right?
Новое СНВ.
Новое СНВ, okay. And after that, there is nothing doing. There is nothing doing. And I think it's about time. It's about time that we should resume dialogue. And in this case, I suggest it's not be a dialogue, it should be a trialogue. I think that China should join this discussion, because China has a huge nuclear weapon program, which includes the construction of nuclear submarines, of intercontinental ballistic missiles, and so on. And I think we cannot go on further without the participation of China. So I suggest its time has come that it should not be the 2, it should be the 3. Now, about in a week's time or in 2 weeks' time, there will be a new meeting of the Chinese Communist Party, and there will be new leadership of China, and I hope that this new leadership of China will support such an idea, and I think I don't see why Russia could not support it. I think Russia should also support the idea of a trialogue. And about Trump, I can't say anything about him because he's such an unpredictable person. So, about Trump, I should keep quiet. Maybe those of you who better know the American situation nowadays maybe can answer this question better than me. So I suggest there must be a new discussion by the three. What should they do? This troika should they do? I think first of all, they should prolong the existing New START treaty by 5 years. This is the first thing they do. Now, they should discuss the possibility of reductions. There are figures in the present treaty. They should reduce. I don't think that they say that the leaders of two states, of Russia and the US, are psychologically prepared for very big reductions. But at least they should reduce by something, say by 500. It would be a good step on their part. This is one thing. Number two, China, which is now has a huge, and is doing this program, huge program. China should stop it. And I think China might, if Russia and the United States are going to reduce a bit, China, I think, would be prepared to consider the possibility of stopping its nuclear program, at least for the time being. Number three, I think that the treaty to abolish nuclear weapons, which was signed in New York in September by some 50 or more states, I think it's a step in the right direction. While I'm not sure that Russia or United States or China are prepared to join this treaty at this time. Yes, but I think that this is a treaty which leads in a good direction. And I believe that the Troika, the three, should express some positive attitude towards this treaty. Because, after all, this is the goal to which we all should go. Let me stop at this time, because I think I took some time, but I'm now prepared to ask your questions.
Thank you, Roland Mikhailovich. Спасибо. No, we are fine with time, and you're as organized and disciplined as always. But you send us a few messages here which are both thought-provoking and provocative in your last part of your comments with idea of the Troika, China joining, which is definitely not that obvious. And it definitely is interesting to see the reactions here, as well as on the treaty prohibiting nuclear weapons, which some of us believe is very counterproductive, but you always been on a view that the world and the nation should go this way. But let me be provocative, and I will put only one question, and then we'll give the floor to our younger colleagues here and experienced colleagues, so we will hopefully mix. Roland Mikhailovich, we just last week had a discussion in Paris about the future of nuclear non-proliferation. And Professor William Potter, Bill Potter, who you know very well, by the end of this meeting, he just put it this way. He said, "This is kind of surreal non-proliferation world." And I think that both of us who are in this process for many years and the students who are just learning about this process, they feel certain surreal element of what we call nuclear non-proliferation. Surreality is when we say that there are 5 nuclear weapon states, but at the same time there are not 5 but 9. Surreality is what you just told us, that Israel should become a concern maybe more than North Korea, but for Israel it's okay to have nuclear weapons as Americans told them. Surreality is in the fact that some believe that putting nuclear weapons outside their national boundaries, their national territories, is okay in accordance with the treaty. Nuclear sharing was permitted with the treaty. Others believe completely the opposite, and you remember the story better than many others. But some feeling of surreality is certainly there. Let me put it this way. You told us about Article 6 and reminded. I was surprised that you were critical, self-critical, saying about weak elements of the treaty. I think the treaty is very strong, and it's great we have it. But Article 6 is also that element of surreality. I cannot explain to my students, well, maybe I do it poorly, and I'm sure you can do it greatly. Article 6 tells us about nuclear arms race cessation at an early date and to nuclear disarmament, which we all know. And that it speaks on a treaty on general and complete disarmament, which nobody could really understand and digest today, or maybe misread it. So do you feel that surreality, and how you can explain this general and complete disarmament part in Article 6?
I'm wondering whether we should discuss, we should lead this discussion into this philosophical issue, whether it's surreal or not. As I said before, in 1960s, we thought there would be 25, and we knew it very well, because our special services and American special services, they knew who is creating a nuclear weapon and who is not creating a nuclear weapon. And we knew that there would be 25 to 30. And now we have 8 plus 9, plus 1, 9, okay. Where is surreality? I wonder, where is surreality? There is no surreality. We have done quite a thing. And we created an important legal basis. And I can tell you about one fact which I didn't mention in my preliminary speech. Ukraine. When the Soviet Union broke up at the end of 1991, Ukraine immediately wanted to become a nuclear weapon state, because on the territory of Ukraine there were so many Soviet nuclear weapons. How many, I cannot tell you, because I was involved in this process. I cannot give you these figures, but very many. If Ukraine became a nuclear weapon state, it would be number 3 after the Soviet Union and the United States. Now, but on the basis of the NPT, we were able to persuade Ukraine not to become a nuclear weapon state. And this stands up till now. Up till now, this stands. We put a lot of effort to this. I spent 3 years doing this. I spent 3 years persuading the Ukrainians not to do this. And what I used, only one thing in my hands. I used NPT. I used NPT, and they did it on the basis of NPT. They made a statement. They signed a paper that they are going to sign to become a party to NPT, and they are going to give all their nuclear weapons to the Soviet Union, to the Russian Federation by that time. So what is surreal in this? I'm wondering. What kind of surreality you find in this? And I can give you more. What about South Africa? I didn't tell you about South Africa, but South Africa had 6 nuclear weapons. I was also involved in the South African problem, and they demolished all their weapons under the control, under the safeguards of the IAEA, and South Africa is not a nuclear weapon state. But there is a two. Now, what about Iran? What about Iran? Iran has cut down its nuclear program, and everybody is agreed. Trump is not in agreement, but maybe he is surreal. Trump, I don't know.
Спасибо. Thank you, Р.М. Mikhailovich. Who takes the floor? Okay. Sarah Beth. Yes, I should say for the audience and also for Ambassador Tимербаев that we have here, among other colleagues, our 9 students from our dual degree MA program in non-proliferation studies, which we do jointly between MGIMO Peer Center and Middlebury Institute. Monterey, at Monterey. So
I like Monterey very much. Thank you.
Sarah Beth is one of the students who will come to Monterey already in January for the 2nd semester.
First, I'd like to say thank you for speaking. This is a very, very unique opportunity that I very much enjoyed. But my question goes to the spirit and the essence of the NPT. Today, we're told a lot this pessimistic view of disarmament, that we'll never see complete nuclear disarmament in our lifetime, and it's a long-haul question. When you were working on the NPT, was that how you saw Article 6 in disarmament? Did you see it as a persisting problem that will exist over generations, or was it more optimistic, and did you see the cooperation that could really lead to complete nuclear disarmament in a relatively short time span, or regular time span? Thank you.
How do you see it? Optimistic way development of the events, or it goes ups and downs, or pessimistic with the non-proliferation? Do I interpret your question correctly?
You see, I will have to switch to philosophic view of that. I think I mentioned, maybe not clearly as I should have in the beginning, that nuclear explosive is something which is given us by the universe, by God, or anything. Why? Because the development of universe is going by way of extinction of certain life, and the appearance of a better life. If you take the whole, I'm very sorry, folks, that I have to talk about this. It's a rather philosophical issue, but still I will, because otherwise you wouldn't understand. You see, the universe exists for 13.7 billion years. And it's always million and billion. Milliardов. And the universe is always developing. It's not only developing, it is developing in an accelerated way. And scientists don't know for how long the universe will exist. Some people say for 30 billion years, milliardov billion years. Some say for more and so on. And everything which is going on all the planets, on all the stars, and on our darling Earth, which is going on by way of extinction of bad species and the appearance of better species. That has been going on for 13,7 миллиардов лет. Now, how is it done? It's done by different ways. For instance, by asteroids. We are waiting for another asteroid in 2087 or 89. I forget. My second interest after nuclear weapons is asteroids, but I forget the figure. In about 60 years, there will be asteroid which may demolish everything. All our Earth may demolish. It's just one possibility. Another possibility is nuclear explosive. Nuclear explosive exists because by way of nuclear explosion, we can kill all life on Earth and a better life will come to Earth. This is the view of scientists. It is not me who invented this crazy idea, which I am telling you. This is scientists' belief. And if you read about this, you can read about this. There are libraries of books on this subject. Everything is something extinct. There were six massive extinctions of life on this planet. 6 massive. Remember dinosaurs, they all gone. And thanks to dinosaurs, to their death, we have people on our Earth. Because dinosaurs couldn't let people, us, appear on Earth. So when you ask me whether I am optimistic or I am pessimistic, I cannot answer this question because maybe I should say I am optimistic because through that optimism, this humankind will disappear and a better humankind will appear on this earth. Excuse me for my bad English, but this is what I think. And not I think. Scientists think about it.
Спасибо, Roland Mikhailovich. I think this is a good way to approach it philosophically. I think it's much more interesting to approach it this way rather than to discuss some minor things and small talk and stuff like that. Ambassador Lysenko. Mikhail Nikolaevich.
Thank you, Ambassador. So, NPT treaty is about states, legal obligations, prohibitions, permissions for the states. When you drafted the treaty, did you anticipate that persons, individuals, non-state actors, including terrorists, could be the major source and the major risk and threat for proliferation?
You can come and do this to me. No, we didn't. No, we didn't. We didn't. There was no terrorism then. Actually, there was no massive terrorism like we have today. In the 60s, we did it in the 1960s. We signed it on July 1st, 1968. What kind of terrorism was there? There was no terrorism. Nobody didn't think about it. At least I didn't think about it. But I was very close to my foreign minister. He didn't think either. And I was quite close to the American delegation, and I studied very, very carefully archives of Lyndon Johnson. I want to mention the name of President Lyndon Johnson, because he was so closely involved in this. And I didn't know that when I negotiated the treaty. I didn't know that. But after that, I went to his archives in Austin, Texas, and read his papers. He was watching every word of the treaty, Lyndon Johnson. He didn't know nothing about terrorism there, nothing.
Yes, please. And if you could introduce just yourself.
Excuse me?
Introduce yourself.
Yes. Thank you, Your Honor, to be at your presence and listening to your comprehensive and informative speech. My name is Hadiya Nazari, and I have a question. It can be both answered philosophical or technical. I listened to the articles that you mentioned in different resolutions suggested and proposed in the United Nations regarding the non-proliferation, proliferation of the nuclear weapons. And we discussed different states that are recognized as nuclear states. Could you by any chance guarantee these resolutions to be abided in any drastic situation, like for example Israel, that is in the status of nor confirm and neither deny? Can you guarantee or make sure that they're not going to use the nuclear weapons that they have, which is apparently it's a huge stockpile, ever in the future, or the United States, or Russia, or China, or any of them?
So the question, to put in a nutshell, is do you think that in a drastic situation, if I interpret it correctly, in a drastic situation, states with nuclear weapons, either Russia or United States or China or Israel, would abstain from using nuclear weapons, or there is a risk that they will be using nuclear weapons regardless of what it is said in their doctrines? Am I
exactly
correct?
Personally, I don't think they will. Personally, I don't think even that North Korea will ever use nuclear weapons. Because, you see, those who have nuclear case, nuclear suitcase, they understand everything. They understand everything, what it means. Now, some military do not. but those who are involved very closely in the nuclear in decision-making process, who are very closely involved in this, they understand very well, and then even know this philosophical issue which I mentioned a few minutes ago. No, they will not use it. Nuclear weapons will never be used.
But the current president of the United States, Trump is constantly threatening North Korea of
but this
removing
is
it.
propaganda. My friend, this is propaganda. This is propaganda. Don't pay any attention to this. It's a propaganda. He says that he wants to have 10 times more nuclear weapons than he has now. Is he crazy? But for some people, it means, especially for those who listen to, in Russian, to Первый канал, вот люди, которые, я скажу по-русски, вот те, кто слушает Первый канал, они могут, это может в голову прийти. Или кто слушает там CNN в Америке, ему тоже это в голову может прийти. А человек, который разумный, слушайте, вы знаете, you know that only 9 people in the world have access to a nuclear suitcase. Only 9 people. 9, that's it. And now, by the way, in the United States, there are some people who believe that it is not good to let Trump use his finger. And they suggest that there should be 3 people in the United States who can press the button. Yes, people write articles about this in US magazines. I read such articles. I read from very clever people who say that how come we allow Trump to use one finger in order to press the button? We shouldn't do this. We shouldn't do this. It should be 3 people. It should be Trump, his Secretary of State, and his defense minister. 3 people. But he alone can have it. But really, many people don't trust him. Who knows?
Yes.
Who knows?
You mean 3 confirmation before it's launched? You mean 3 different people have
Yes,
to confirm
some people suggest.
Yeah.
No. Now only Trump has a nuclear suitcase.
Yeah.
Now only Trump. But some experts, whom I know very well, and whom I respect very well, they believe that it is not right to trust Trump. And let's put 3 people: Trump, his Secretary of State, and his Secretary of Defense. Yes, there are such, if you have internet, you can find such an article.
Thank you, Roland Mikhailovich. From what you are saying, I think the message is that nuclear weapons will never be used because they are not weapons of battlefield for any of the actor. They are only political weapon. And the second conclusion I may make that all players who have nuclear weapons are rational players, so they will play rationally, although some may be more rational than others.
Cuban Missile Crisis played a very important role. It was, of course, a great mistake by Khrushchev to send nuclear weapon rockets to Cuba. But the end of it was that Now everybody understood the possibility, the results of a nuclear war. I even say, but don't quote me, that even the use of nuclear weapons against Hiroshima and Nagasaki was also needed, because without that, without Hiroshima and Nagasaki, nobody knew about the existence of nuclear weapons. Nobody knew about it. And now we knew. That's important to know.
Thank you. Yeah?
So my first, thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for giving us such a wonderful speech. I come from China, so I'm very interested in the topic you have mentioned about calling for China to join the New START Treaty. So,
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say it. I didn't say that. I said that
Some next treaty.
START.
this treaty is between the two.
Yeah.
They shouldn't, China should not join this.
Yeah, I mean to
They sh-
cooperation with.
Yes, they should make a statement. For instance, a statement that they're not going to continue with its nuclear program.
Yes, I mean, okay, to set up new initiatives
Okay.
or something like this, could you predict any challenges or obstacles that Russia or United States will face to calling China to join such a triangle initiatives? For example, in my eyes, the Ministry of Defense in China is highly secretive when it comes to talking about nuclear forces. Their unwillingness to release their data in this issue. Or can you predict any challenges that you're gonna face in this problem? And
Secretive.
So the question is, what Ambassador Timurbayev thinks of China thinking. So why China should join Russia and the United States, whether China would be eager to do it or will resist it?
My dear friend, I know from my friends that China would like to join the meeting of three. This I know. Number two, I know that China is prepared to stop or to freeze, let's say freeze, its nuclear weapon program if Russia and United States are going to continue negotiating and reducing its nuclear arsenals. This I know from I have my own sources.
so much.
Thank you very much, Roland Mikhailovich. You are intriguing us even more. Please.
Dear Ambassador Timurbaev, I really liked your lecture. Thank you.
Please introduce yourself.
I will. Thank you very much for your lecture. Well, my name is Nadezhda Maslenikova. I am the second-year student of the Regional Studies Master's Program at МГИМО, and I'm also the cultural attaché of the Moscow Non-Proliferation Conference, that one that you're going to take part in this Thursday. Since I specialize in South Asian countries, India and Pakistan, so that's why I have a question about them. As you know, last year, India and Pakistan, they applied for the NSG membership, a nuclear suppliers group. And NSG, right. And I wonder, what do you think about if the NSG member states should let them join? without signing any documents like the NPT or CTBT or joining maybe some other non-proliferation documents, because India and Pakistan believe that it's kind of discriminative to make them sign these documents. Otherwise, they need to give up their nuclear weapons. So I really wonder what you think about that. Thank you.
This is the most difficult question from an absolutely charming lady. And I'd like to answer this, but I cannot because I'm not following NSG. I was one of those who created NSG many, many years ago. I know that Russia is against. Russia against. If you ask my personal view, I'm not a politician, I'm not an official, so I can say whatever I think. I don't know, but I would answer in this way. I think a way should be found. I don't know what kind of way. Whether they should sign this treaty or that paper or that treaty, I don't know. But I think a way should be found for both India and Pakistan joining NSG. That's all I can say.
Roland Mikhailovich, but just adding to this, do you think that US-India 1 to 3 agreement on actually US-India cooperation was a way in that direction you are saying, in finding the way out, or it was complicating things?
Perhaps complicating. I think perhaps complicating. It was a rush decision. You see, because the United States doesn't like China. That's the whole thing. We cannot choose between them. I don't think Russia should be choosing between China, Pakistan, India, and so on. We must occupy a better position.
Please, Veronica.
Yeah, first of all, Roland Mikhailovich, thank you very much for being with us, for having this lecture. It's really a unique opportunity. My question is about the Treaty on Prohibition of Nuclear Weapon.
About what?
Treaty on Prohibition of Nuclear Weapon. Yeah, as far as I understand, you welcome this treaty.
Well, yes, I will.
Yeah, and my question is, do you think it will become a new cornerstone for non-proliferation regime, let's say, of the 21st century, and can it coexist with the existing NPT treaty?
I think I cannot say this about this particular treaty, but generally speaking, there must be a treaty to prohibit all nuclear weapons and so on and so on. It should replace NPT at some point in time. We are not yet prepared for this. We are not prepared to, because we have leaders in our countries, both in Russia, in the United States, in China, in France, and elsewhere, in Israel, and so on, who are not yet prepared, I'm afraid, not prepared to come up to this point. But at this point, we'll have to come one day. One day. It may be a different treaty, not the one that was signed in September. It may be a different treaty. I don't know, because for instance, verification is not quite clear from this treaty, for instance. So, but eventually, it should be one treaty for all nuclear affairs. And IAEA should be part of this treaty.
My name is Alexander Chekhov. I'm lecturer here at МГИМО University. So, Roland Mikhailovich, thank you so much for your lecture. I have a following question for you. It is related to your starting points, actually. What do you think about the concept of so-called preemptive disarming strike? For example, American military officials, they say that United States now possess a capability to make such a strike against North Korea, for example, to destroy their nuclear weapons at all and avoid any sort of retaliation. There have been a lot of situations in history like this, for example, in the relations between United States and Soviet Union in 1950s, when United States possessed a superior majority of nuclear weapons and so on and so forth. Do you consider that somehow it is possible to avoid this total annihilation you were referring to at the start of your speech? Thank you so much.
Well, I would like to avoid it, but I cannot say that I am sure I can do this. And no one can do this. Annihilation may come. Annihilation may come. Like all dinosaurs were annihilated, for instance. So I think we should do our best to avoid this. And what we have been doing, I spent all my life trying to avoid annihilation. I was the first one in the foreign ministry who said, you should start thinking about this. It was in 1954. And since 1954, I'm doing how to avoid annihilation. But I cannot tell you 100% that I can do this. I cannot give you 100% assurance that I can do this. But I'm doing only this. I retired during the Soviet Union. Since then I was teaching, of course, but not doing too much. But I'm thinking about it every day. Every day after my breakfast, I start to think how to avoid annihilation. But I haven't yet found the show what it is.
Again, thank you, Ambassador, for being here. This is such an honor, and I'm very excited. My name is Annalise Pluster. I'm a student, master's student with the dual Monterey, МГИМО program. And my question is in regards to Article 1. You had talked a little bit about how much time it took to reach consensus on the language of Articles 1 and 2. And then you went on and you said there were some articles that weren't as strong. Now, when we look at Article 1, there has been quite a few disputes and much criticism for many states for not adhering to Article 1, especially as it pertains to command and control and not transferring control of weapons. In your opinion, has this article been upheld by weapon states? And if not,
Excuse me.
Article 1.
Repeat the last sentence.
Yes, in your opinion, before that, regarding command and control, or which part?
No. Okay.
Oh, yeah. In your opinion, has this article been upheld by weapon states? And if not, what could be done to strengthen commitments from weapon states to adhere to the language of Article 1?
I didn't quite get the point. Did you?
No. So basically, Annalise is, if I may interpret, concerned whether Article 1 of the treaty, whether it works fully or you're not fully satisfied how it works.
We are 100% satisfied.
My question is in regard to criticism of some states, especially when we're talking about NATO and U.S. Positioning of weapons on NATO partners. So the question is, has the United States upheld the treaty if they have transferred weapons to those sites, or is that?
To whom they transferred? I didn't understand you. You said how?
Basically, it's about NATO nuclear sharing, just to name names. Whether NATO nuclear sharing violates the treaty.
But there is no nuclear sharing. It doesn't exist.
So I guess the follow-up question then on that is, was there ever any thought into defining what weapons meant in that first article?
You see, nuclear sharing, the term nuclear sharing, was invented for the benefit of the Germans. Only for them, not for Russia, not for the United States, not for whoever else. Because for the United States, the major problem at that point was to involve Germany into the treaty. They sent vice presidents, secretaries of states, and whoever to Bonn. Bonn was then the capital, because Germany didn't like it, didn't like the treaty. They sent a very strong ambassador to Geneva during the negotiations. And nuclear sharing was invented only for the benefit of Germans. There is nothing about nuclear sharing in the treaty. And there is an Atomic Energy Act of 1954, which prohibits, and we knew that, which prohibits any transfer with the treaty or without the treaty. It prohibits any transfer. Atomic Energy Act, I think of 1954, if my memory is correct. So, what are nuclear sharing? Germany decided to abandon any nuclear energy at all, except for one or two reactors for producing medical radioisotopes. This is how the Russians understood everything from the very beginning. It was Mr. Gromyko, my boss, who said this to me. He knew that then, in 1966, that Germany will not get anything. And why United States placed B-61-12 in Germany? Is it against Soviet Union? It's against Germany. So that Germany should sit down quietly and don't show up their noses too high. No, I'm serious about that. I began to say joking thing, but I'm serious about this. Because, and this was in the interest of Britain or France, because there were two wars. In the 20th century, there were two wars with Germany. So nuclear sharing is just for Germans.
At least we know that the trick worked, because in our list of proliferation concerns, which we have many, numerous, we have many names, but we don't have Germany at the moment. But of course, I'm sure that the same question of the NATO, US allies, and US nuclear weapons on the European territories has not been eliminated with that, unfortunately. So it's like some things come, some things go. We have time for one more question, maybe.
But only,
Yeah.
1 second. Please go to Austin, Texas, and read Lyndon Johnson's papers. He knew it. He understood better than all of us together.
All right. Any other? Пожалуйста, Наташа.
Roland Mikhailovich, thank you very much for your presence. I'm honored to be here. So, and my question is, I believe it's a point of concern, or maybe a point of concern in the future, that right now it's peaceful coexistence of two groups of states, legal groups of states who had acquired nuclear weapons prior to 1967, and those unofficial nuclear states. What do you think? Should there be done anything with these unofficial nuclear states? Should be they given legal rights somehow? So,
What kind of legal rights?
as those like 5 countries, like official nuclear weapons possess, or I mean even the rights and obligations which they have given to the world community, not to transfer, not to proliferate, and like those unofficial states who can do whatever they want because they are not members to the NPT.
The new countries like India, Pakistan, and
Yes. Yes.
I don't see any particular need in that. I don't know. Why should they? No, there is a problem of nuclear suppliers group. It should be solved somehow. And I agree with that. It should be solved. But how? I cannot give you an answer. I'm not involved in the NSG right now. I'm not following it very well. But why should they be additionally? Now, then we shall have to change the text of NPT. If you want to include, for instance, Israel into a nuclear weapon state, which Israel doesn't want, by the way. Israel never said that they are a nuclear weapon state. Okay, let's take India. If you want to include India as a nuclear weapon state, you will have to change the text of NPT. And if you open it up to everybody, now all people in this room will rush to you with proposals to change this article, to put this comma, and then to put this dot, and so on. Why should we do this? There is no need for that, absolutely. There is one problem mentioned here about NSG. I think they will solve it somehow after a few drinks.
Yes, speaking about the drinks, it is almost time for us to conclude this seminar part of our meeting with Ambassador Tимербаев. Roland Mikhailovich always surprises people. And one of the surprises today, among others, was, Roland Mikhailovich, when you said that NPT should be replaced with a new treaty prohibiting nuclear weapons. We are not there yet, but I must say that this short treaty you co-created already quite some time ago. It still exists, it still helps, and for those of us who want to check our readings of the treaty with your knowledge, or at least for those of us who are Russian speakers or read Russian, of course we always open your classical book, Россия и ядерное нераспространение, where all the history of nuclear non-proliferation from its beginning and until the treaty was concluded is there. And for those of us who just want to know a little bit about your many interests beyond non-proliferation, we open your memories, рассказы о былом, which is one of my favorites, actually. So I'm always glad to see those of our colleagues here, our junior colleagues and not necessarily junior colleagues, who go into these books and their source of information, and for many, source of inspiration. I will pass the floor now to Director of Peer Center, Albert Zulkarneev.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Roman Mikhailovich, for this great opportunity in this new building of МГИМО. I hope you enjoyed, but certainly everybody enjoyed here. For us, it's honor and pleasure that we have such opportunity. Thank you to UNIRLH for your moderation, and thank you everybody who attended this lecture. I think you remember this as a kind of historic or important lecture for your professional development. Keep it in mind, we'll think what to do with this. And I'd like to say that thank you to all students and everybody who participated in our meeting with a group of Non-Proliferation, GGA, and our guests, lecturers and experts. We continue shortly this meeting level below in the auditorium 315. And to all other people, I would like to say thank you very much and see you at the lecture of Dr. Blix and Ms. Nakamitsu on Thursday. Thank you.